Hello, everybody, and welcome back to The Rock for another episode of the Cup Duet Reviews. That's right. If you haven't gotten enough of my face with Nicholas Nickleby, you're going to get another face full of Mackenzie. This time, though, we're talking about a musical, and we are talking about the new Canadian quintessential musical that ranks right up there with Anne of Green Gables in Canadian theater, and that is none other than the 2017 musical Come From Away with book and lyrics by Irene Sankoff and David Heen. And we are talking about the Apple TV Broadway recording that was just released this past month in honor of September 11th, 20th anniversary. And so to do this duet review with me, we have none other than the wonderful Jillian Robinson. Hello, Jill.
Hello, Mac. How goes it?
Goes very well. Please tell us what is in your cup. What is your ensemble?
Yes. So in my cup today, I have the cup. I feel like it had been a while since I've been in the cup, so I thought we'd bring back the mug.
Yep.
And I am drinking coffee. I wish it was Tim Hortons coffee. It is not, but it is. The brand I have right now is called the Great Canadian. It's the President's Choice brand. So
yep.
The Great Canadian coffee is what I'm drinking today.
Perfect.
And obviously I have my water to stay hydrated.
Yes.
My ensemble today. So I actually recently moved back to my place in Toronto, which opened up way more closet doors of ensemble choices. Because for about a year and a half, I didn't have half my wardrobe. So I haven't worn this number in a while, but this is my navy blue blazer. And I thought it was quite appropriate for tonight. For our flight attendants and our pilots.
You're very Beverly Bass.
Exactly. I'm Beverly Bass bounding for this recording for sure.
It.
And no earrings today. I just thought I would, the blazer and was a statement
yes.
tonight. So
love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Let's see. Well, tonight I am drinking a blueberry blackberry Crystal Light. So we get the blue theme going here. And then I'm wearing my blue and white shirt that kind of looks like the little Come From Away globes from a distance. They're really white diamond things. But, from a distance on the camera, it looks little circles. So kind of like the little globes in the logo there.
Love it.
So, yeah, that is that. So, Jill, why don't we start? Because the event that catapults this musical into action is a very tragic and very much modern historical event that impacted everybody globally. As we find out in this musical, it's not just Americans, it was everybody around the world was somehow affected by this tragic event. So, Jill, for you, since we are both on the younger end of the spectrum, what do you remember about that day exactly?
Well, I remember I think I was 5, and it was the days of school that I wasn't in school, so the every other day system was in place. So I was at my grandparents' house, and I remember my parents both got off work early that day, which was out of the norm, right? And came directly to my grandparents' house. And my family, we were pretty open about things, and I have older siblings as well, so the talk of news, and both my parents being medical professionals, we kind of at a very young age knew facts about worldly things. And I just remember them talking with my grandparents and trying to be, tactful as much as they can and to not scare me or my siblings. But I do remember it being very serious. I knew it was serious because my parents were putting on a little bit of a front, right? And we didn't watch much of the footage. At least I didn't see much of the footage. Obviously me being young. But I do remember my mom, not fully explaining what had happened, but telling me that something in the States. And I grew up in Windsor, Ontario. So I'm a border city kid. Detroit's right across the border from me. So that was also a little bit alarming on our side too, because at that point, the state sort of went into a state of emergency, right? And we're right across the pond from that.
Right.
Literally, it's a
the border
20-minute drive.
Yeah.
And so it was certainly alarming. And me being kind of like a big-brained kid, even at 5 years old, I kind of wanted to know what was going on. And I just knew that the adults around me were like fearsome and did a good job again of explaining, like, you know, we're just glad we're all together right now, and we're kind of figuring this out. And me being a little ball of sunshine 5-year-old, I was just like, okay, well, I'll just keep being me and trying to bring as much smiles and laughter and comfort that I can. Yeah, and then again, being a bordered city kid for quite some time, there was sort of just like tension or apprehension, right? Or at least in that first week post the attack. And then growing up, it wasn't until I was like in my adolescence that it really sunk in that that something like that had happened. But yeah, and then every year, it's just, there's that part of our hearts. You take that time, you take that silence, because it really did shift. And as this musical, as we talk more and more about it, like, it really did shift all people.
Yes.
But
yeah.
What about you, Mac?
Well, let's see. 2001, I was in grade 1, because my years always match up with whatever year like it was. So I was in grade 1, just started full time at school. Let's see. I don't remember picking up on anything going on at school that day. It was a full day of school for us. I don't remember being sent home early. What did tip me off, though, was the fact that my parents had the TV on a weekday, because we did not do TV on weekdays. Okay. And so they had the news on, and they had left the room, and I decided to change the channel to like my channel. And they came back and they yelled at me, saying, like, why did you touch the channel? Like, change it back. So I remember that. And then I remember the next day in class, we had a whole discussion with our teachers about it. So there was that. And then it was actually only a few weeks ago when I was cleaning out my big keepsake chest of goodies at my parents' place. And I was going through all my papers that had been kept. And sure enough, in an envelope, I discovered that my mom had stored away the letter from September 11th that I guess the principal had sent out or sent home with everybody, because email wasn't big at that point. So they would have had to print all the paper and then stuff it in envelopes for every single student to take home to their parent. That basically said, we haven't talked to them much about it in school. We'll be talking about it tomorrow. Please, tonight, if you can, refrain from going like into too much detail. We don't want to upset children, have them coming in talking to the other kids and like starting the rumor mill. But we found that letter, and I almost, because I was just going through papers quickly, I almost threw it out till I actually read it and went, oh, wait, hold on. This is actually like a historical document of that day. So there's that. And then you get, like you, I didn't get, I don't think the right word is interested, but I didn't become aware and actually do research on it until I was in like grade 7, grade 8, because there was the film United 93 that came out by Paul Greengrass. And my mom actually took me to see that at the theater downtown. We went on like opening weekend to go see it. So my mom had thought this would be an interesting or a movie to go and watch. And it's a very well done film. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend watching United 93. It's a very well done, honest depiction of that day. It's not super rah heroic, still like over the top patriotic. It's very grounded. A lot of characters, you don't know their names. And that was a deliberate choice by the director. And I think it's the same thing here, where we get very few names of actual characters. Like, yes, they have names like Kevin T, Kevin whatever, Hannah. Like, we get a few names, but you have to be really listening to the book to catch their names.
It's not really about that too.
Exactly. It's not about one person. It's about the broader world and the community that is affected by this event. And so, yeah, that film was really well done. I thought it was quite well done. Yeah, that's kind of how that's our experiences with this national event. But Jill, what about the musical though? Because we're here to talk about Come From Away, the musical. So
Yes.
what have you done with this musical? Like, was this your first time to it? Were you familiar with the score?
So I sort of, amongst many other up and coming Canadian artists
Mm-hmm.
and industry personnel, I kind of
Mm-hmm.
got some VIP accessibility to this
Ooh.
musical because
Mm-hmm.
the program I went to,
Mm-hmm.
for those of you new listening, was the
Mm-hmm.
University of Toronto and Sheridan College Theatre and Drama Studies program.
Right.
So Sheridan College was the birthplace of this musical.
Right.
Way before I was at Sheridan.
Yes.
But
2013 it started at Sheridan
yes.
College.
So when they put up like they did like pre-show. They did like a pre-show performance in downtown Toronto, and they invited current Sheridan Theatre and Drama Studies and musical theater students, and also a bunch of industry personnel and producers and artists, Canadian artists and Toronto based artists. And so that was my first performance of it. It was downtown in Toronto. I can't remember if it was Royal Alexandra or the Princess of Wales.
It would have been Royal Alex, because that's the only they only did it there both times.
There it is. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, the Royal Alex, and it was filled. Like every single room was filled, and that
it was pre-Broadway run was sold out. It was huge.
and it was interesting. The night we went to, like I said, it was specifically for Sheridan students and other art students and artists from. So the entire audience, we were all like performers or artists, right, or critics, and so that was kind of neat. And then I saw it again on Broadway in New York with my family.
Ooh, lovely.
So sitting amongst like New Yorkers and tourists in the audience. So I had very different audience experiences. And let me tell you, with this musical, like, you felt it. You felt the difference.
Yeah.
Like being in an all Canadian audience in my first time, and knowing that this piece is coming from a school that you're a part of, and it's so it's such a gorgeous connection of like Americans, Canadians coming together, and then again being the example of just humans coming together and sharing love and support in a time of turmoil. But there was something to us all being artists and experiencing this vivacity together, and then seeing it in New York, there was just more like of a truth, not like a truthfulness, but like you know that the people sitting in those audiences like were directly affected by the content of the story. So like every somber moment in this musical, it is gonna hit you. I still, watching it on Apple TV, I still bawled in the moments I bawled at, but it was so fascinating to me, like these different audience perspectives. The emotions were just couched differently. So we saw it twice in person, and then just seeing it on Apple TV this past week was great. It was so nice to see the pro shot, because again, I had sort of, the usual way of watching a play when you're sitting in the audience and you sort of have the full stage and you're seeing everything all at once. But with the pro shot, it was really lovely to sort of get more intimate and see different angles of characters and
get up close. So there's a lot of great close-up shots.
Have your view sort of skewed in a way that you wouldn't be able to see it if you were just sitting in the theater. So, and then like we were saying earlier, with this being such a collective piece, it was super nice to get up close and personal and sort of more contact with characters in the different episodes that present themselves, right? So so a lot. Come From Away is near and dear to me for sure.
Yeah.
But how about you, Mac? Was this your first time?
No. So it was actually my mom who had heard about this show when it was doing its Toronto pre-Broadway tryout, because an employee at work had come in and said, this is a really good show. And my mom very rarely will ever come in and say, I heard about the show, we should go. Like that's usually more my dad and I's thing to push a theatrical experience. But my mom will do it sometimes if there's something that really piques her interest, and this one did. So sure enough, It was then the Tony Awards that year that I got my first kind of real glimpse at the show, because my parents actually came down and watched their segment because they both wanted to see it. So we were all very excited, and I knew that it wasn't going to win when it was the first musical that performed that night. Because typically, if you watch every year, it's usually the musical that is first is the one that probably didn't win, because the one that usually wins is held out to the last performance.
Right.
But the one that is like the runner up, or like the next closest one, gets the first slot of the night. So they still get all the eyeballs on them, and then like the ones that are like in the middle or like not as hot are usually the ones that are like performed by in the middle. So it was nice to see that. So I was like, oh yeah, you don't go blowing your big winner of the night first out of the gate. You got usually hold that, and that was the year of Dear Evan Hansen. So they were really like building up, like Ben Platt's coming, and then Dear Evan Hansen won. Yeah, still salty.
What a way to open the show, though. Like,
oh yeah, absolutely. Like,
too, like every number of Come From Away is like a
energy.
Like,
it's energy. It's energy. So yeah, so we all watched the Tonys. We loved it, and then when we found out they were doing a Toronto production, we all got excited for that. My aunt actually flew in from out west, so yeah, she flew in for that, and then we all saw it together. There was my mom, my dad, my sister's partner, and then my aunt and her partner. So it was a big group of us that all went to see the show, and we actually had to be broken up into 2 separate groups because we could not get like 8 seats together. It was basically we had to go 4 and 4 basically to do it. But we did dinner right beforehand. It was lovely. I mean, my friend Lisa Horner is part of the Toronto cast, as well as Amir, who came on for our Falsettos episode. He was in it, and he's a swing in that show. So he was one of the Kevins that night. I think he's the one that breaks up at the end.
Okay.
I think that's the Kevin he was. But so I was lucky. I was so happy that I got to see him do the show. And it was great. I mean, that show, seeing it live on stage, there is something special. It's almost very Shakespearean the way it's done, where basically everybody's on deck, everybody's on stage, nobody's off stage really, everybody's participating. Yeah. It's very much kind of Joan Littlewoody, like very down to the ground, almost like what we did for Oh What a Lovely War. Like it's minimal set, very sparse, moving things around, and it was just beautiful to watch. Like, everybody was always engaged on stage. And you really tell this was a strong ensemble, which explains why when the show went to the Tony Awards, none of them got none of them were there for Best Lead Actor. It was only the actress playing Beverly Bass who got Best Featured Actress for that nomination, because clearly this is an ensemble piece. This is built like nobody is the lead. Everybody is equal in this.
Yeah. Well, and kind of like cracking that open more too. Yeah. I think there's something fascinating about this being a Canadian musical, and like it's very from like a sheer form point of view, it's very different from the traditional American musical, which is predominantly like song and dance a little bit more. You have your protagonist against the chorus kind of vibe, and you follow that trajectory, and there's a clear cut plot, and this to me
think Wicked.
It's very devised. It's very ensemble based, right? It's a lot about the unity more than the individual, and you can tell that this was sort of like a workshopped, devised piece, because the end result resonates in those episodes. Not every character or character's interactions are fully fleshed out. It's just sort of like a snapshot. You're dropping in, and and that, I think, again, that paired with, like you were saying, the Joan Littlewood-esque of like groundedness, I think that means that just dramaturgically speaks so much to our setting, which is like the woodland areas of Canada, right? It's like literally behind you right now, Mac. You have like the trees and the wooded stage, like that stays the same, and it's to kind of like constantly remind you are here. You know what I mean? Like you are here. So many things like tie together beautifully, and then like this can take us on another tangent too, but like the music motifs of
absolutely, we'll definitely get into music.
The repetition of things, and like just the use of repetition, and
it's huge. It's huge.
Such like a psychological sort of safety net, right? Of like reminding, and then another, and just
Yeah.
Collective breath. Anyways, I'm exploding everywhere because this musical is amazing and there's
It opens so many doors. And fun fact, so the reason why the set's so sparse is because that's a holdover from the Sheridan workshop where they didn't have a budget. So they just used chairs and a small cast, and the writers went, oh, this actually kind of works for the story. Because you realize that when you're having to change so many characters throughout the show, you don't have time to do big sets. You don't have time to do that. You got to do it's almost Brechtian too, like almost theater of the absurd in that sense of.
And I've said this in other panels too, of like it allows the interaction and the emotional the emotions and the acting to be forefront, right? Like we've talked about that in other discussions of when there are sparse sets and it's not there aren't grandiose costumes. There isn't anything else that's sort of taking away from the messages at hand than like kind of what you were saying with Shakespeare. It really is just the actor in the raw performing. And there's that gets you right here. Like
it does. And I mean, this really is a great companion piece to the OG hit Canadian musical Anne of Green Gables. I mean, both are East Coast musicals. Both have that very similar vibe to them, very home, down to earth. They both are depend a lot on motifs, like musical motifs, to carry the story. And it's all about community. Like both musicals, like I think that's a big Canadian theme. Is like we are big on the community aspects. We are big on the human. We are, as you said, a little bit less like flat, like Roger, like we're a little bit less like modern Flash, Wicked. We're still very much more, a little bit more in the modernized version of like, say, like an Rogers and Hammerstein, like a good book, very grounded show. Like even Drowsy Chaperone, which I think is the most Americanized Canadian musical we have. It still has that bit of that Canadian charm to it. It's small. It's very much a chamber piece. It's not big. It's very satirical. It's got a bit of that humor to it that a lot of Canadian shows have. That's very wholesome. So it's really great. So yeah. So speaking of the show, why don't we get into a bit of the cast? And sure. I want to start this though, because I want to say, well, I love this cast. Since we're bringing up that this is a very Canadian musical, part of me when I was watching it goes, I wish we had filmed the Mirvish Toronto cast for this, like or at least done something at the finale, like done like a cutaway to them in Toronto, done something special, just because this is such a Canadian musical, and I know some of the actors on that stage are holdovers from the Canadian workshops, the Canadian tryouts where it went to Broadway, for sure. But there's part of me that goes, oh, it'd be nice just to do the Canadian cast. They're so good.
But I mean, I like though that I think since the very beginning, because correct me if I'm wrong, the original cast wasn't all Canadian anyways, right? Weren't there some Americans?
In the Sheridan workshop, you mean?
No, in like the first sort of like
Toronto yes. So that original tryout.
You're talking about like the origin story actors kind of thing.
No. I mean, like I said, doing this cast behind me.
Yeah.
They film it in Toronto with like the current Mirvish Toronto cast. That's like the all Canadian. Because I mean, I love this cast, and I know there are some Canadians who are in this cast who are fantastic. But there's part of me that goes, this is such a Canadian musical, and there's such pride and ownership that this is a Canadian Canadian musical, that I wanted a little bit more Canadian presence.
I would disagree with you, because I like that it's sprinkled with both Americans and Canadians, because I think that is the true heartbeat of what this message actually is.
Good point.
I think it just happens to be like the ground on which this musical erected from was Canadian. True. But like, to be honest, we wouldn't have the story if it wasn't for our American
a Broadway
sisters.
producer. Yeah.
You need a Broadway producer also to get just it. Like the story in itself, I think it's from the very beginning, like the curtain goes up to the curtain goes down, or the last fiddle string is heard. It's very much like the interwoven interweaving of Canadians and Americans, right? Yeah. And I think we should be doing more of that.
I agree on that front.
Because just in all shapes.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, it would be neat to
Yeah.
kind of see the full Canadian cast, and like, yeah, we very much are little brother, little sister,
Yes.
little sibling to the
Yeah.
musical theater world.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think just the
I know.
content of
Yeah.
this is
I know also that we were very restricted because of the COVID restrictions. That maybe
yeah,
if there wasn't a COVID restriction, they would have flown down the Canadian cast to join them on stage at the end for like a finale reprise. I
right.
don't know, but either way, like it's still great. I mean, this cast is phenomenal. They did so
Mm-hmm.
well, and the fact that they actually
Mm-hmm.
got back a lot of the original Broadway cast to come
Yeah.
back and
Yep.
return, like the actress who
Right.
plays Beverly Bass, whose name is, well, I got her name right here. It's Jen Colia.
Yeah. Kalila. Yeah.
Yeah, Cola. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So
She's
she
great.
came back as she came back as Annette and Beverly Bass again. So
Mm-hmm.
that was lovely to see that. So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Jill, who is your cast shout out for the night?
Yeah, well, like we said, like this one was so difficult because everyone is so good, and like, but like this whole story rests upon the collective. Like there are no
Mm-hmm.
star-studdedness doesn't exist in this musical. That's another reason why I love it.
Yeah.
It's, like, sure, super well-known famous actors can
Mm-hmm.
absolutely be in this musical down the line, but like that's not what it's about. And it never, I kind of hope it never really rests upon that. I don't think it will, just by the nature
No,
of the
it
story
won't.
being
Yeah,
what it
yeah.
is. But I honestly think that the energy and the chemistry that is needed to be shared and exchanged
Mm-hmm.
throughout so many movements, even from like a practical movement, like
Mm-hmm.
choreography,
Yeah.
the switching of characters, like that. So technically,
Yeah.
everyone has to be a unit. But then the content and the many dips
Mm-hmm.
and rises
Yeah.
of the stories and the types and the people and the super sad moments and then sparked up with the super
Yeah.
jazzy, energetic
Mm-hmm.
moments. Like you have to be like a mental, emotional, physical unit as a
Yeah.
cast.
Mm-hmm.
So honestly, like my cast shout out is the whole cast acting as a unit, but a couple just like, so I guess some people I'll shout out. Joel Hatch, who plays our various mayors
Yes.
and yeah, he's awesome. Like I mean, like I said, everyone is, but
He starts the show.
Yeah, and his swing into his
Yeah.
different. He had like the very welcoming, warm, like let's get the job done. This is Gander. We will do this.
Yeah.
But then paired with he had some like asshole characters, right?
Oh,
Who were just,
absolutely.
like, terrible people, and he just fluidly went back and forth.
Yes.
Back and forth. And it's very strong throughout. Another one, to shout out Paul Whitty, who's our Oz Fudge. Then he also plays the Jewish gentleman. And he has some other like checking in the passengers once they come off the plane. Like, so he has the
bus driver.
The bus driver, just a lot of like a handful of characters. And again, he puts so much like everyone was so different and so strong. And then obviously our go-to ladies like Beulah and Annette and oh gosh, Diane. Oh yeah, Diane. That trio just that's every time seeing it, and I was like, oh my gosh, this happened again the third time I watched this. But it's when those women sort of like they kind of set the tone of the piece.
They do,
right? Or at least the tone of what Gander is going to be.
Yes.
And so it's so great, like following their trajectory. Oh, not Diane. Sorry. That was not the character. Bonnie. Yes. I love Bonnie.
Bonnie with the chimps and the dogs in the cargo hold.
So so like I said, everyone is my favorite, but those are just other little bits and bobs.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, like the ensemble itself is the star of the show. But I mean, some highlights for me are Q Smith as Hannah. She has the most hardest emotional track to do in the show. She is the one whose son's the firefighter who's lost in the towers. And I mean, her heartbreaking rendition of I am here. That when she's on the phone and she's frustrated and she's struggling, like her voice just has such a heartbreaking quality to it that it just breaks me every time she has to do that character, because it's just so understandably frustrating. And the fact that like with all of the technology she had, she still couldn't get answers she wanted, and she just wanted to know. And the fact that like she used up the entire answering machine, and
Yeah.
that's the time when we had answering machines, and
And
it's just the frustration, the sadness that comes with that when she says he's gone after this whole journey.
well, and that's the thing too. I
Mhm,
think that character has so
mhm.
much like riding, not riding on it is not the right word, but
She's the
it's like the
emotional weight of the
first
show.
it's the first
Mhm.
indication of it like directly impacting someone's
Yes,
story that we have followed as the
correct.
audience.
Yes.
Everyone, right? Like the majority of the folks we're following
Mhm.
are those who are in the plane, landed in
Yes.
Gander, and this thing is happening
Yeah.
happening around them. It's
Mhm.
happening globally to them. It's happening nationally to them,
Yeah.
but they are there in
Mhm.
Gander. And
Mhm.
but then when you do have Hannah, I was so taken aback and shocked. And again, being in
Mhm.
the New York audience on
Right.
Broadway, that was definitely a moment where everybody's heart stopped for a second in the
Yes.
theater. Like people actually like gasped or like
Mhm.
audibly were crying,
Yeah.
because it throws it in the face of it being real.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
right, it's like we're not hearing about it anymore, it's happening.
Yes.
And Hannah's our gateway to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like as the story unravels, I think even
Mhm.
in Me in the Sky,
Yes.
Beverly's song, when
Mhm.
I can't recall. Last night I was trying to focus in on this, and I'm pretty sure I didn't miss a part of it, but the idea of like it was a terrorist attack done by a plane, like the where the plane
Yeah,
was the
basically, yeah, they
bomb.
took my yeah, they
That
took my
the
my
idea, like,
love and turned it into a weapon.
yeah, and talking
Mhm.
about, it's not until the play sort of unravels
Mhm.
that like the event is talked about in that
Yes.
way, right? It's always like
Mhm.
something bad has happened or this has happened, or
Yes.
like a helicopter
Mhm.
flew into a building, but then it was like,
Yeah.
okay, here are the facts, this is what it was.
Yeah.
And then we get Hannah being like, okay, my son has perished because of this
Yeah.
event. Like it's like
Mhm.
things become like start tugging more and
Yes.
more. It's real. Like
Mhm.
it actually happened,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
sorry, that was
And
kind of
I
a
will
tangent,
say
but
my
yeah.
other shout out goes to Canadian actor Lee McDougall, who plays Doug, and the British gentleman Nick.
Right. Okay.
I thought he was so lovely. Like he has just such that charming quality to him that
Yeah.
it's like you can see that warmth and that heart to this guy, and you can see why like he I guess also nice to see that he's an older like love interest character. Like a lot of times, like it's the youthful
Mhm.
young love, but it's him and what's the name of his partner? Is it
Diane. Yeah.
Diane? Yeah,
Mm.
played by Sharon Wheatley. Like the
They're
two of
so
them,
sweet.
like it's almost like a Tevye and Golda situation where it's like an
Mhm.
older love that you're seeing blossom here,
Yeah.
and in the way just he's so corny, like the whole I had to go get my medication. Don't worry, it's not that oh god he's off his medication.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I guess just those innocent interactions they do,
Mhm.
and they did such a great job of the two of them together as a pair building this relationship that every time you get to the end where like you don't realize they move together, but it's like we tried making long distance work, we couldn't make it work, and then they build in that pause that they do it in Toronto too, where everybody's like, oh no, did they break up? And then it's like,
Yeah.
surprise, he moved to Texas to like,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's like that thing of like you get so invested in this older, like this more
Yeah.
mature coupling that it's like this whole "Stop the World" song is just so it's such a great juxtaposition because on one hand you have the tragedy of what's caused them to be in this situation and falling in love in this area, but on the other hand you're like, oh, but this works for you two. You two have been given
Mhm.
this opportunity because of this.
Yeah.
There's that weird push and pull of I'm rooting for you, but I'm also sad the fact that the way you came together was because
Yeah.
of this tragedy. But then it also shows that even out of the darkest tragedy, love will prevail in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. And I think that's definitely one of the heartbeats and thesis statements of this whole
Yeah.
show, of
Yeah.
like, to be reminded that at the end of the day, it's the raw love and support of humanity coming together, literally giving the clothes off their back, literally like making food until 5 in the morning and splashing water on your face and doing it all over again. And this musical highlights that wonderfully.
So then, Jill, what was your favorite song of the show?
Oh my goodness. Again, what a question, because they're all amazing.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Hold on, I'm gonna pull up a list here so I can actually give you an honest
I also have
answer.
my list up too. Just so I can get the name of mine right.
I mean, I'm always a fan of Screechin', just
yes.
I think
Kiss the cod.
It happens like right in, I don't know, it's like there's some sort of crest in the play.
Yeah.
Where, right, because before this, like, prayer has happened, I am here has happened, right? So we've gotten into it. It's just like it's a wonderful, I don't even want to call it a release, because this whole musical really does a wonderful job of releasing and purging and all the things. But it comes at like a moment of
when you need that energy.
What we were just talking about it, right? And when we're like, this is getting real. This is actually like, it's starting to percolate, right? It's been several hours, days, since the attack, and then it just kind of, again, it brings us back to the Canadian aspect of it, too, right? Of it's such like everybody who goes to Newfoundland, you gotta get screeched in.
I couldn't do it. I couldn't do that.
I want to do it so bad. My mom did it. My mom went there for a concert a couple years back, and she definitely did it. But yeah, it's just so fun, and I love when the musicians come on stage.
Yes,
it's just like so normalized, and it's just like they just become people on stage too. Love that. I love that, because I think quite often in musicals it's like separate, right? It's like
it goes from like what's the term? There's a whole theory of that. It's like diegetic music versus what's the other term? But basically, it's like going from like superficial like music that's not of the space to being like the band actually comes on, and now they are actually part of the story. They're actually now playing as if they were in the bar, and it's authentic. Right. It's like in a movie where there's the soundtrack in the background, but then somebody turns on the radio and they're now listening to the radio. So that music's now become like an actual physical part of the story.
I think it's also just it's a cool thing of like from a performer's point of view. Like here you have a lot of like actors singing, storytelling, like wonderfully well done and moving, and there's elements of movement, and then you have like this mini dance number, and it's like oh my goodness, and you're doing that too, like, you know, and it's just it does have that like energetic take back to musicals, and then it gets back into it with Me in the Sky, like then it comes right, we kind of slowly make our way back into
the the whole In the Bar Heave Away Screech is such a great song, because you're right, it is the energy pickup you need, like almost because my favorite one is the prayer. That is still always my favorite. It gives me chills every time we get to that song, just because of how beautifully and how they get that message once again of we are all human, we are all the same, like whether Muslim, Jewish, Catholic, Protestant, Presbyterian, whatever, and you all have these different versions of the same prayer, basically. And the way the writers have just melded all these different versions together and to create this beautiful cacophony of basically like the world praying, basically the world offering a prayer, and it's stunning. It's stunning. But then it's almost like you could do an intermission at that point of the story and then start the next act with In the Bar and Heave Away. But then I like the fact that we don't get an intermission, that we just keep the story going.
Yeah.
And yet that song still works. It's almost like a act 2 opening, like a pick me up into the next bit, into the next part of the story. Yeah. But yeah, like that whole sequence of I am here, prayer, heave away, screech, like that whole sequence of the song is fantastic. And I also will say the waiting on the plane, the what is it here? 28 hours.
Yes,
Wherever we
yes.
are, we're just naturally builds from like quiet frustration to then just raucous drunk energy, to then them getting off the plane. It's just a great way of building that 28 hour. I can imagine being on a plane like that, stuck on a tarmac. Like, it's one thing to fly on a plane for a long time, because like I did that when I was younger, and we did a family trip to Russia, and basically we flew for almost an entire day from Moscow back to Toronto, and it was a long day to be sitting on a plane. But I can imagine like the fact that like you're just stuck on a tarmac, you don't know what's going on, and just that frustration. That's like at least when I'm flying, I know where I'm going to, I know my destination, but I'm just stuck on a freaking tarmac and I can't get off this plane.
Well, it's interesting talking about just like the two little segment chunks of the 28 hours into wherever we are. Like you said, it starts like, ooh, there's like this internal struggle, and then the alcohol gets flowing and they all get friendlier. And then the song right after that is Darkness and Trees.
Yes.
They're on the bus and they're like, oh my goodness, we really are in the middle of nowhere. And so that's a perfect little like, doo-doo, like literally a heartbeat, like a doo-doo that the musical does, because it's like somber, and then here's an explosion of happiness and joy and finding whatever joy would have you, and then it takes us back into the reality of things, and then going back to, we just talked about with I Am Here and prayer and that sort of like collective hope and camaraderie, and then we spike up with the screech, but then we also kind of ground back to Me in the Sky, because in that whole song too, we talk about like women and how like their identity and how that's been
the sexist airline industry that is still going today.
So there's this musical does such a good job of literally creating a heartbeat pattern. Everyone's that whole symbol of like everyone's heart fell out of their chest when this happened, and that all we had was the love in our hearts to kind of support and figure stuff out. And I just like I can't put a finger on many musicals that like really intricately in form and musicality marry itself amazingly to the structure of the story.
No, I mean, like, I love that you described it as a heartbeat, because looking at the songs and seeing the way they're built, I'm like, you're absolutely right. Like, it's a spike in energy, and then it's right back down to a really human grounded moment, because we have that thing on the plane where it's like drunk raucous, like the whole joking of like Celine Dion's wherever, like my heart will go on. Actually, the heart. But then you're right back down into like the Darkness and Trees, and we have that beautiful scene on the bus with the Bible. Like, it was just so lovely. Like, like once again, like they just built a really solid musical.
And then again, like with we talked about this a little bit earlier in the discussion of like the and then another and then another. Like, to me, that's like a beep beep, right? Or like that sort of hope. The amount of times too, like talking about this groundedness and really getting to the core of like the you are here, like constantly the characters.
It's like a homing beacon,
reminding themselves or reminding each other, right, that they are grounded in a time when there is complete chaos, and quite honestly, tragedy had occurred from something not being grounded, from something being up in the air, and like a skyscraper that was very far from the ground, but yet now they find themselves in the heart of this wilderness where they're like, right?
There's a
like
moose.
Literally going to the root. Oh my gosh, that part just so Canadian. Good. The amount of the Canadian isms in this piece, very
climb off to shoppers.
So, but yeah,
so good, so good. Jill, was there anything for you that didn't work? Because I think you and I are both giving glowing reviews, and like I struggled to find anything that really stood out to me as like I didn't like I don't think there was a worse or a least developed production or design element. I think this whole piece is so tight and strong that it's hard to pick out anything that's like, oh, that didn't work for me.
Yeah, because like I said, it's such a different form, and it knows
Mm-hmm.
that it is.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if you were sort of a traditional musical theater goer,
Mm-hmm.
it might take you a while to jump into this new form. It might be
Yeah.
like, oh, they're changing costumes on stage. That's
Yeah.
interesting. Or,
Mm-hmm.
oh, there's no set piece. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But it's
Yeah.
very Brechtian in that sense. Like, it tells
Mm-hmm.
its audience what it's doing from the very
Yeah.
beginning. Yeah, which sort of sets it up as you're seeing what you're seeing, and
Right.
we're not shielding anything that you're seeing.
Mm-hmm.
That alone is just like, okay, well,
Mm-hmm.
I can't debate that. Yeah, I think, like I said, the casting always in this piece requires the casting to be incredibly strong, because there
Yes.
really has to be that resilience and reliance upon
Mm-hmm.
all characters and actors at all times.
Mm-hmm.
the musicality
Mm-hmm.
is stunning. The bareness of the stage, the raw, like, woodedness of the stage. So I'm going through all the things that I love to try to find something that I don't, and
It's tough, right? Like I when I was making my notes, I'm like, is there
I
anything that
think
really didn't
the
hit with me? And I'm like, maybe we could have used some more varying camera angles, because we do a lot of wide shots, and then there's like the sporadic, really cool moving close up on stage, where I'm like, so that's just an
yeah, but
editing choice, and
so
kind of what they could get on stage.
one thing that I guess, like, I wouldn't want it any differently, because I do
Mhm.
love the episodic nature of the piece, but
Right.
again, knowing that it sort of came from workshoppy, probably like patches of content that were then sewn together.
Yeah, and it's
There
also
are
documentarian style theater, where it's like they interviewed
Right.
all these people and then kind of strung together
Yeah.
their interviews and amalgamated certain people, and certain
Mm-hmm.
characters got mixed.
So, yeah, there are some stories. There's
Mhm.
some individuals that we meet
Mhm.
that I'm interested in how the rest of their story flushed out.
Right.
Like, because we're kind of like dropped in and taken out of some of these people's
Yeah.
lives, we don't really get to see how they unravel more,
Yeah.
or we don't really get a nice, like, tied with a bow packaged
Mhm.
deal of who that person
Yeah.
is. Again, I think that there's a reason why, because that's not the point. But I get, this is just me. I'm so
Yeah. No, I get you.
invested and interested in these
Yeah.
characters. I
Mhm.
want them to have. I want the rest
Yeah.
of their story to be told.
Yeah, like I wanted more Bonnie and the animals. Like that, like little fact, keeping these little segments of her doing stuff with the animals, and I kept going, can we just focus on her just a little bit more? Because she's got
Yeah.
a really interesting storyline here of
Mhm.
dealing with these animals.
And even, like, I think, like, Ali's story ends a bit abruptly. Like,
Yes.
we see him helping out in the kitchen. The moment
Right.
where he's being strip searched, that moment is so interesting to me, because they
Mhm.
really do place a lot of attention on, obviously, what's happening is appalling and incredibly uncomfortable in various amounts of ways, but the fact that there's a woman in the room, like, that added, like, another layer
Yes.
that I think sort of informed the audience of, like, yes, we know that it happening to the character that we,
Mhm.
as the audience, so the characters on stage with Ali villainize him, but
Mhm.
this play does a really good job of the audience never do. Like, a lot of the times
Right.
when you're watching a musical, you're watching a play, you are introduced to a villain, and
Mhm.
almost right from the beginning, the characters who villainize this character, the audience is supporting
Mhm.
those characters and
Yes.
seeing that person as a villain.
Yes.
But what this piece does is the audience, like, is always with Ali and on Ali's track.
Yeah.
And then when
Mhm.
we're taken into that, like, appalling scene, there's another thing of, like, okay, this is wrong in so many ways, and also getting more personal, there's a woman in the room, and
Yes.
the fact that is also making, so we got that. And then I like that, he was helping with Beulah in the kitchen, and we got to hear more of a story like that. But then it just kind of ended with the letter that he sends to Beulah of, like, send me the recipe of the fish and cheese, which is fine, but I just I don't know, I wanted more of his voice, kind of.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I will say, spinning off on what you just went on there, I think what this musical does really well is, even though, yes, there are tough situations like the strip search, you don't fully look at the people as villains or antagonists in that moment, because you can totally understand when that flight attendant comes up to Beverly Bass and goes, here are my XYZ reasons. Like, I don't feel safe. And I mean, right or wrong, I go, well, now in hindsight, yes, we can look back and go, he wasn't a threat. He wasn't he wasn't going to hijack and do anything to the crew or the passengers. But at the same time, right after this big event, and all you know is that
he was staying true to history. Yeah,
exactly, and the fact that like even when like he's praying and they kind of come after him there. Once again, as much as I go, yeah, it's really horrible that they did that this happened and it still does happen. In that moment, in that I can look back at that moment and go, I get where that anger and that fear is coming from, and it humanizes everybody. It gives even the people who are making decisions that in 2021 lenses we definitely wouldn't make, but we can also understand that in the days following 9/11 in 2001, you can understand why people were lashing out the way they were. And I think that's a really nice way of examining that history, because that is a darker part of this history, is that a lot of people of Middle Eastern descent were prosecuted and were persecuted when their planes were forced to land.
That's what I was just about to say, with this piece kind of being like erected in 2013. I think we definitely, this musical, in what you're talking about, shows that side just as much as the attack itself having an impact, but like the like underbelly society disgust and maltreatment of innocent people that spiraled from this.
Well, I mean, we all know what happened, right? I mean, the strip search with leads almost, you can almost draw a line to almost what's going to happen later on down in like Guantanamo Bay, right? Like it's that escalation. But at the same, but in that moment in the story, I go, I feel for both parties here. I feel for all three. Beverly Bass's uncomfortability, his uncomfortability, and the crew's uncomfortability. Everybody's afraid. Everybody's worried.
Because no one knows anything, right? Like that's the thing. Like everyone is,
Like there's a real, it's a human story. We are all fallible, and we all can look back at those actions and go, yeah, that wasn't great. But you also go, in the moment, would I do anything different? Probably not.
That's a good question. That this this musical definitely puts on people's minds. So I guess like in all of these moments, again, I think it plays to what the musical is. Like it is supposed to be this, like, you're not supposed to marry yourself to one thing or the other, and there's episodes of and snapshots of stuff happening. But you just get so invested in everyone, and I want more.
Yes, I want more.
Yes.
I mean, no, this is a beautiful, beautiful piece. Jill, was there anything you wanted to talk about and explore?
I think just one thing that was kind of on my mind, because a couple are coming down the line, but the idea of adapting musicals into films.
Yes.
So I have an answer to this, but I'm excited to just bring this thought to the table and get your opinion, Mac, of, do you think this piece would be good as like a film adaptation? Why why not?
So, no, I don't think this works as a film, because the way this is written is narration. It's, I went here, I did this, I did, like, you're a lot of the it's a lot of exposition. Like I remember one of the jokes of the show was when people watching this, it's like, well, yeah, you're doing a lot of exposition. That's like 90% of the musical is, I went here and I did this. I drove by and saw Oz, the police officer told him to roll down the window. Well, in a film, you don't do it that way. You just do it, and you put underscore. So for me, I go, the show works best on stage, and I know the team is working on adapting this for film, but I just go there. I mean, they've put it on the back burner now that they've done this. It's being delayed. But I know they were working on it, and I know there's a lot of rewriting or reworking of scenes that has to be done, like either remusicalizing a moment, like either musicalizing that conversation between Bonnie and the police officer when she says turn on the radio, because you can't be narrating on film. Like unless you're doing something where it's like it's at the anniversary celebration and they're being interviewed and we're seeing flashbacks.
Right.
But even then, you can only narrate for so long because once again, film is a medium of show don't tell. This is very much a tell and show, but tell first, because as we see, it's such a sparse stage and the cast is so small. You have to be overly full of exposition so the audience can follow this story. And because there's so much, and it's all fourth wall breaking the whole time. Like you are brought into this community, into the story that you're being told. That on film, I don't know if it works the same way. So in this current situation, no, and I don't think this is one where like I'm dying to see it turn into a film. I'm happy with a film stage production because I think that's where this lives the best. I think there are other musicals like a Parade, Ragtime, Rags, some other musicals out there that are so epic in scope and so epic in what's required of them that they can't be done on Broadway successfully because they just cost too much money. That I go on film, that works much better. It's basically when you. That's why I like, even though Les Mis was not a great movie musical, it has the makings of a great movie musical because it's so big and epic. That part of the joy of seeing that musical up on a big screen is the fact you get to see Paris, the big sweeping shots of Paris, of the barricades. Right, like there's something that you can't capture on stage you get on screen, and here I think something would be lost if you tried to translate it from stage to screen. So that's my answer to that. As much as I love any movie musical,
I had the same answer. I think.
I
think going back to because like you said too, like once now we have this pro shot of it. That's all that this piece I think really needs. So I'm like, I'm shocked that they're going to do a film because I feel. We talked about this. It's like it's a collective piece. There really isn't one person's story, and like you're not supposed to be like married to each character's trajectory, and that's very hard to do in a filmic setting unless you have some sort of like style switch or flair to the musical. But then now we're veering away from it being like the raw musical just in a filmic setting.
Right.
Like one thing I thought I was like, okay, it might be kind of cool if it was like a lot of drone shots that are like literally over Gander or like seeing the school buses drive away. But then it would have to be like a constant flow of music and very snippy and exchangey.
Yes. Yeah, I don't think it works well.
It would also if it did pull off like that, it would be too much of like a film phenomenon that I think it would tear away from what the core of the story is actually supposed to be, because you would have to get really creative with your shots.
Yes.
And then that, I think people would be focusing more on like, that was a really cool switch or a cool handoff. And it's like, okay, well, that's not really the point. And then again, it kind of going back to even more when we talked about like the traditional American style musical is very like, you have this protagonist that you can follow and you can scope in with the camera, and then you know song and dance can happen in the background of all this, where we don't really have that in this piece, so it would be very choppy, like hard to
once again, I think the character you probably would there's certain characters you would have to heighten their focus on, like the Kevin and Kevins, the Beverly Bass would obviously get a heightened focus. Probably Beulah and Hannah will get some focus because they're another partnership that's strong, as well as I don't keep forgetting their names. Frig. Diane and Nick. That'd be so like those would be the ones you'd have to really kind of take out and do some heightening work and fill out their stories. But once again, like it's such a tough show.
It tears away from what the actual musical was.
Yeah, exactly. Just like United 93, the whole power of this musical is that there is no one standout. There is no one hero. Everybody has their moment to shine, their moment to be focused upon and get the attention. And I think that's what's really great about that. I mean, like there's a reason why Dear Evan Hansen's coming as like a movie musical, because that's much more easier to translate to film, because as you said, it's a natural American musical that has the protagonist and the natural kind of storyline that lends itself well to a film. This does not. This is very much its own thing. And I mean, the nice thing is we've done it. We've now done Hamilton. We've done Come From Away. I hope this is we have Diana coming onto Netflix, which is interesting because it's going to open on Broadway, and I don't know if that's going to affect their sales. If people are like, do I pay money on Broadway or do I go see it on Netflix for cheap? Like, I know Come From Away, it's such a phenomenon that it has that staying power that even if you can watch it at home, not everybody has Apple TV. So it's one of those things that, like, if you can have it, great. If you don't, you can still go see it live. And this is a musical that deserves to be seen live. But I think hopefully we'll see some other musicals get the pro shot treatment.
Well, and it's something like without going too far into it, but like especially with pieces like Come From Away and Hamilton, like to me, that's exciting for me as a musical theater artist because like if we're running into these, because I would go the same personally. I would go the same route with Hamilton. I would not like to see a film adaptation because
it doesn't work
with a pro shot. The piece resonates in that specific medium. Like let's halt.
Plus the cast.
Let's digitize it to that and that only. But it gives some hope and groundedness to live theater, right? It's like if we are now making these pieces that are fresh in form and new and taking past stories and very much making them super relevant and resonant with folks of today, and having them kind of fit the mold of that medium. Like live theater isn't going anywhere. Where like pre-pandemic, we were already kind of a dying form, and then like in pandemic, it's like, okay, when's theater coming back? But with these pieces, like these are some staple pieces, and like they are the heartbeat right now of musical theater.
I mean, I really do hope we will see some other shows that will get, like, I can see Six being a show that can get a pro shot. That's once again, that's not a show that fits the natural mold. It's not one that I can see adapting well into like a movie musical, but you definitely can do a pro shot of it if it proves to be popular enough that you can do some really neat stuff with that one. I'm trying to think of some other ones that are coming that would be really good to do. I mean, there's always, there's a lot of the classics that have had their chance. Like Cats has a pro shot, Phantom has a concert pro shot, Les Mis has several concert pro shots. But like Jesus Christ Superstar has some pro shots.
Like, those still have the like workings of, and they have been successful film adaptations. But something like Six is a really good example too of like I think that works. Like let's stop it at a pro shot. Let's not do a film adaptation, because then you're starting to strip away the purpose of those, like these story. So I guess like kind of what I'm getting around to is hopefully we will continue to go down this road of new musicals being written like very much from the beginning, intricately woven with form. With this new type of form. Like the physicality and the text are very much in like both sharing the stage and very much both important at the exact same time. So much so that like it is rooting itself on the stage. It's like, you can't take me behind the camera, you know? It's great. Look at us. We're spiraling to now.
I know
the future of musical theater.
Well, I mean, once again, like that's the joy of this, is that I like the fact they're recognizing that some shows are able to do the proper like jump to movie musicals, and then they're realizing there are other ways to honor some of the other ones that don't, and still get the proper attention. And once again, I think it all starts with Hamilton. Hamilton proved to be popular, which then opened the door to studios going, what else is out there that we can get the rights to? So Diana came along. I think we may be a little bit Diana'd out eventually soon, with so much Princess Diana stuff coming down the pipeline. But it's good that they're getting their fair share now. So we have them Come From Away. Like, we have so many great shows that like I would love to, like, apparently they're going to be doing a rumor that they're going to be filming Sutton Foster's run of Anything Goes from the West End.
Okay.
So that's a one there. Company by Sondheim, the one they're doing with the female Bobby. That would be another good one, because once again, Company, like I've drafted Lloyd to do it as a proper movie musical. but in its original form, in its abstract, non-linear plot form, it works really well on stage. And I think the cast is really strong they have. So I can definitely see them wanting to maybe do a filmed version of that. That's like a proper production, not just the concert they did a few years ago. So yeah, it'll be very interesting. I'm very eager to see how, even though we're getting back to reopening, how we continue to use the digital medium to lend ourselves to seeing more theater, because we were doing that before with a lot of plays. Like Stratford did a lot, National Theatre did a lot, but it was all plays. But musicals have an even broader appeal. So if you can get them filmed, they will prove profitable, I guarantee. Because not to besmirch some of the other stuff, but like Nicholas Nickleby, it adds a really great material, but I don't think everybody's wanting to sit through 9 hours of content. But people will sit through an hour and a half, 90 minutes of Come From Away, and it's great to watch both versions. Like Nicholas Nickleby is great just as much as a Come From Away is great. It's just using that digital medium to capture some beautiful bits of theater, which is the most important thing, right? Like making theater as accessible as possible, because not everybody can afford to go to Broadway to see Hamilton, but people can afford a Disney Plus pass. They can watch Hamilton at home and Come From Away. Not everybody can afford to go see Come From Away on Broadway or in Toronto, but they can watch it at home for themselves. Like $5.99 a month, I think. So really great that way. Yeah. So there we go. Any other thoughts, Jill, we want to explore? Or are we wrapping it up and flying at a gander?
Watch this, pour yourself a beverage, alcoholic or non-alcoholic.
Screech.
Yeah, sure. And bring a Kleenex box and treat yourself to some, like, one of the best pieces of our time right now. I think it is. Sure.
It is. Yeah. And I will say, exactly that. Like, come on out, watch it. You won't be sorry. It's worth the $5.99 or $10.99 it is to buy it if you don't want to get Apple TV. Like, this is definitely one to show the kids, show the family. It's just a lovely family experience musical. And the show does a really good job of capturing that community. And even though you're not in the theater, you still get that wonderful homey vibe brought from the stage to your screen. So watch it. It's a great Friday night movie. So get on out there.
It's a reminder of the positive side of humanity.
Agreed.
I honestly, like, in some of our panels we say, like, would you recommend this as a watch to theater students or to your students? Or
yes,
every human being should watch this musical.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Love it. Well, Jill, on that note, where can people find and follow you?
Yeah, so people can follow me on my artist Instagram account, which is jillian.robinson96. As usual, I'm posting some musical covers and
love it.
Keeping folks up to date of, I recently just went to Stratford with Ryan. So posted all about that. So, that's where you can be all abreast of what I'm up to.
Love it. You can follow me on all social media platforms at Mackenzie Horner. You can follow my other antics about musicals with Before the Downbeat, a musical podcast. We will not be covering Come From Away because it does not meet our 10-year mark yet. We'll have to wait till 2027 to do that. But there are other great musicals. We did an episode about the Canadian Anne of Green Gables musical as part of our 3rd season. So you definitely can check that out if you're wanting some more Canadian musical love content explored. There we are. At the time of this recording, we will have just started season 4 with Wicked, the Aussian musical about the Witches of Oz. So you can check that out, as well as our shot by shot and trailer review for the most recent trailer for the upcoming West Side Story remake, because that is coming this December. And if you can't tell by all the content I post about it on For the Downbeat, Autumn and I are very excited about this upcoming adaptation. It looks so much better than Cats that we saw 2 years ago. Like, leagues and bounds better than that. But there we go, everybody. Remember to follow the Cup of Hemlock podcast if you're not already, so you can take us on the road with you wherever you go. And then until then, everybody, stay healthy, stay safe, and we will see you all with our next episode. Thanks. Bye. Cheers.